Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the final discussion here on the main stage today. It is a huge honour to have these wonderful practitioners with us talking about stress management, which I'm sure we all need at this time of year especially. We have Rob Ria, Sophie Medlin, Dr. Mariam Zamani, and Fumni moderating the conversation. I will now pass over to Fumni. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. And just a little bit of housekeeping, actually. Anyone who doesn't have headphones, I think it'd be great if you could put your headphones on, just because there's a lot of extra energy in the room. And I guess if you would like to focus on the talk, that might be quite helpful. Okay, thank you so much. So I'm Fumi Feto, and I'm an editor and a journalist. And I'm really, really thrilled to be here doing this talk today at the Beauty Triangle. Stress is something that sadly occupies so many creases and crevices of all our lives, whether it's the demands of family, demands of career, whether it's societal pressures. There are just a lot of things that are pulling on us. But today we really want to talk about solutions and not focus too much on the challenges, and really look at how we can manage stress, how we can be joyful and, you know, still feel elevated and still feel in control of being able to manage aspects of our lives, even in very, very hectic times. So without further ado, I will be speaking to these incredible humans here who are experts in all of their fields, and they are able to give us a lot more insight into how our skin and our mental health and other aspects of our the ways our bodies function really tie into how we manage our stress. So I will start the conversation with Dr. Mariam Zamani, who I love very, very much. I think she's an incredible woman, and she's also a brilliant, brilliant skincare expert and also a brand founder. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I think one of the first things that I want to ask you, actually, before we go into this conversation, I'd love you to just share a little bit. Obviously, I know so much about you already, but just share a little bit with our audience here in regards to what you do.
So I am an oculoplastic surgeon and aesthetic doctor, which means that I focus surgery on the upper third of the face, blepharoplasties, eyelid positions. But I love all the non-surgical stuff, so there's a lot you can do before surgery, and that includes anything from injectables to lasers, energy-based equipment, and of course, anything that you do in the office has to be complemented with skincare. And I am a founder of MZ Skin by Dr. Mariam Zamani, and that was really founded to create clear, radiant, beautiful skin at every age. So, you know, the focus for me always, whether it's clinically or at home, has always been to live your best life, you know, at every age. So skin is ageless, it gets older and shows signs of aging, and so you just want to be the best version of yourself.
Amazing, amen to that. One of the things that you said to me that keeps rolling in my mind is talking about how super important the connection between skin and self-care is. You said to me that fusion is really, really super important. Tell me why.
It's actually the reason why I created MZ Skin. So, you know, skincare is a form of self-care, and it doesn't matter if you make a long routine or you have a 2-minute routine, just that ability to give yourself those few minutes to clean your face, put on products that are going to work, and touch your face, give yourself a massage, move the lymphatics around, and have some white space in your head is really a form of self-care. It might be a form of active meditation, I would say. And so when I was younger, I loved skincare always, and I used lots of wonderful brands. After I had my first baby, I developed melasma, which is a pigmentation issue on the face. And I went from having never even a pimple in my whole life to having this darkness that kind of looked like I was dirty, and it really bothered me. So I started going towards doctor-led brands, and they were all made by men for women, and they felt like medicine. I felt like that person who was putting something on my face, which may have worked or may not, but I was non-compliant because I didn't enjoy the process. And I realized that every night, no matter what, going out, studying, exercising, I'd come home, take off my makeup, wash my face, and put a little bit of skincare on, and it set me up every night for a good night's sleep. And that ritual, it's a ritual, and it makes you feel good, and that habitualness is something that I think resonates with a lot of people, whether it's exercise, meditation, skincare. Those are all wonderful things that give you a little moment where you can actually think about something else because you're focused doing your skincare regimen or exercising or meditating.
Tell me how you've seen common issues around skincare that are linked to stress. Because nowadays, we talk about stress quite a lot. We talk about burnout. It's a lot of things that a lot of us are experiencing or have experienced just because of the way modern life is. How have you seen that manifest itself in your clinics and the people that you actually see?
That's actually an excellent point, because stress, means that you have higher cortisol levels. It means that you might not be doing the things that you might normally doing in terms of diet, exercise, meditation. Stress comes in all forms. You're scrolling, doom scrolling. One of the things I'm, said I'm not going to be doing in 2025. But you're scrolling. You're seeing people with lots of different filters, which is detrimental because it actually adds more stress. I love when people are open about what they're going through, because of course when you see everybody who looks the same and has flawless skin, it makes you think that even if you don't think that way, subconsciously it gets to you, and that can cause more stress too. But in a world of stress, all of that manifests in the largest organ of the body, which is the face. That means that your skin will look more lackluster, you will have dull skin, you can be dry, sensitive, irritated. Any sort of skin conditions like eczema, atopy, psoriasis, they can also flare up.
And sometimes you don't necessarily even have to have been a sufferer of eczema, because interestingly enough, I found that quite a few months back, or maybe it was last year sometime, I suddenly found myself with eczema around my neck and around my chest. I've never had eczema, on my wrists.
Your body
and so
reacts.
And it was it was really interesting that something that you've never had before. Yeah.
People often say, their autoimmune diseases come out at a moment of stress. There's so many things that stress causes, and we are constantly, I don't want to say poisoned by stress, because stress is part of the natural, life. But as life gets busier and seemingly easier, you have an easier way to communicate with people, to see people, to do things, but there's so much stimulation all the time that we don't have very much downtime anymore. My parents' generation, when they left the office, there was no email at home, there was no WhatsApp, there was no, Snapchat, there was no nothing. You went home and you were with your family or you were with your friends, and you had that time to connect and make those social connections. And now with everything being very virtual, on top of the fact that you're trying to multitask and do so many other things at the same time, because you see everyone else around you kind of doing a million things too, because they're showing you what they want you to see. It's
not seeing the real truth.
You're not seeing the whole picture.
Say that one of the biggest lies that we've been sold, I think, particularly as women, is that we should all be
everything.
Multitaskers. We should be hustlers, and we should be and I just think it's absolute nonsense. I think it's driving us all
mad. No, I always tell everybody, you can be good at a lot of things, but you can't be good at everything all the time. And so, you have to let go of some things so that you have some time for yourself.
Well, that's one good advice, actually. What are some of the other tangible things that we can do to avoid, well, yes, avoid stress, but avoid stressing our skin? Because also one of the things that I've discovered is certainly after lockdown. So during lockdown, we had a lot of people who were experimenting with lots of different ingredients, and skincare was going through the roof, and so on and so forth. But people were sort of mainlining a lot of stuff and all at the same time. And that was very stressful for the skin. So there are things that I'd like to know, sort of things that we can do to stop our skin from being
So
exacerbated.
more is not always better, especially for the skin. And actually, one of the things that I noticed in lockdown is that people had time; they weren't commuting. A lot of things was, offline, and that was a form of their self-care. And they enjoyed doing it, and they invested in it because it was making them feel better in a time of uncertainty and a time of high stress and other things. And so I think obviously skincare is one ritual that you can start. It's 2 minutes a day. For any change that you make in your life, you have to make it simple and you have to be consistent and you have to keep at it even if you don't want to do it for a little bit until it becomes a habit. And then once it's a habit, it's like, would you ever not brush your teeth in the morning? No, you wouldn't. So, you're going to do that just because it makes you feel better. So I always think skincare is the best way. And I think a simple routine, my idea is to reveal, enhance, and protect. And the reason for that is that you gently cleanse the skin, you create a beautiful foundation and a palette for anything else that you're going to put on top. Then you enhance it, not with a lot of different products or a lot of different ingredients, but with ingredients that work for your skin type and concern. And then also you need to protect the skin. You need to have beautiful skin so that you protect and prevent things from happening. And I love elevating the skin. So here you have, the LED lights here, for instance, that people are using. And that's a wonderful way to give yourself 10 minutes of active meditation underneath red light that's going to, one, soothe you, two, make you sit down for 10 minutes and do nothing. And the light itself is incredibly bright and it makes you feel good. I also love, guashas, rollers. I love all of those things too.
Are these some of the things that you do personally? Because that leads me into my final question with you about your own ways of dealing with stress. You have quite a busy life.
Full on.
You run a clinic, you have clients, you have a brand, you have a family that you're juggling and lots of different things. So talk to me about how you deal with stress yourself. What are some of the things you do?
Well, I'd say I'm lucky because I love what I do. So I feel like when I'm seeing patients, that's also a form of meditation. I'm really in the zone. So, for me, there's no distraction. I'm not picking up the phone call in the middle. I'm not reading an email. I'm not, texting, WhatsApping. And so that period is very protected for me in the office. And I really enjoy that. That gives me a lot of joy because I make other people happy. They come in with an issue and I want them to live their best life at whatever age it is. So we do something and they leave, they're happier, and that happiness makes me happy. But in terms of my own stress, which is mainly my teenage kids, I would say that for me, exercise is very important. And if I don't exercise, I feel something is missing. And again, that's an hour out of every day, and I do it every day, of something for myself. And I think that's really important because I feel like I give so much to my family, my patients, my team, that I need that hour for myself. And I recently started meditating. I can't meditate for long because my mind goes like to a million different places. But every morning when I wake up 10 minutes earlier and I give gratitude to all the things that I have. I think about what I want to do. And then I just I do breathing exercises because that's the only way I can get my mind not to.
Rob's impressed.
And if I breathe and if I count my breathing, then I don't think about other things because the minute I'm not doing something, there's so many synapses that are going on in the brain. So I'd say those are, and of course skincare. So, that's for me, even seeing the beautiful skincare on my shelf and then mixing and playing with it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Mariam.
Thank
so
you.
I'm going to swap you over. We're going to do a bit of musical chairs now. Sophie's going to come into this seat now. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hi, Sophie. So as mentioned before, Sophie's a nutritionist, and I have so many questions for you and really not enough time. But just talk to me briefly and talk to us briefly about the work you do and, how you work with your clients.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a dietitian. For those of you who don't know, dietitians are like the medical nutrition people. So nutritionists hopefully have a degree in nutrition. Dietitians have that degree in nutrition and go on to learn how to apply that to medicine. So most of us work in the NHS. I was in the NHS for a long time. I was then an academic, so I was a lecturer and researcher at King's College down the road. And now I run my private practice. So I've got a clinic called City Dietitians. And my specialization is actually colorectal, which means butts and guts, as my friend likes to say. So I look after gut health primarily, and gut and brain are so closely connected. Hopefully we'll talk a bit about that today. I also formulate supplements for various different brands, including ones called You're Looking Well, who have sponsored some of this event, and Heights and some other brands that you might have heard of, which is a real pleasure to do. And I'm lucky enough to do some media work as well, so it keeps me busy.
Amazing, fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is a big question. The link between our nutrition and our stress levels. Can you share some insight into that?
For sure. I mean, it's massive and it's bi-directional, by which we mean that if we're more stressed, we're likely to eat less well, look after ourselves less well, and therefore the nutritional quality of our diet is reduced. And equally, when our nutritional quality of our diet is poorer, our stress is higher. And during times of stress, we use up nutrients more quickly. So we'll use up antioxidant type nutrients, which are there to try and fight against the cortisol production and the inflammation that comes as part of stress. But we also use up things like magnesium, we use up omega-3 more readily, B vitamins are used up very heavily during times of stress. And so our risk of deficiency becomes much higher during periods of prolonged stress. And I think that speaks to both the importance of making sure you're eating well when you're stressed, but also the importance of trying to manage that stress to protect your nutritional status.
There have been some talk about particular foods having a negative or positive impact on our stress levels. I mean, how true is that?
Is that better? Yeah. One of the things the world loves to do is say, if you eat more goji berries, you're never going to be stressed again, and really pinpoint these sort of superfoods and say this is magic. Where, of course, you can't out-supplement a bad diet. You can't take one food and say this is going to solve your problems, this is going to prevent cancer, anything like that. But that's what social media would love us to believe, because it makes a much catchier headline than the things that I'll tell you about moderation, which is always boring. Ultimately, there are things that we can consume that certainly have a better impact on our brain health and our mental health. And there are things, for example, like having lots of sugary and processed snacks are not going to help our gut health, which has a huge role to play in managing our stress levels. So there are certainly things we can do to support our brain health and therefore stress management, including making sure we're eating oily fish, making sure we're getting those B vitamins, which needs particular attention on plant-based diets or diets that are lower in animal products. There are things we can do, but there's certainly no particular food that's definitely going to control stress. But certainly there are things and nutrients that we can miss out on that make stress worse and make us cope with stress much less effectively.
I'd love you to, and I hadn't shared this question with you, but of course, gut health is one of your many sort of specialisms and focuses. I'd love you to share a bit more about the link between our gut health and stress, because I think a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of that connection between the two.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So very briefly, the gut and the brain are connected in 3 different ways. They're physically connected through the vagus nerve, which perhaps we'll have some speak about later as well. They are chemically connected through neurotransmitters, and they are hormonally connected through the HPA axis, which links your hippocampus in the brain, your pituitary, and your adrenal cortex. And so the thing we really want to concentrate on when I've not got much time is to think about these neurotransmitters. So gut bacteria, as lots of you might know, your gut houses about 90% of the serotonin in your body. And we don't quite know how much of that connects with the serotonin, which is your happy hormone in your brain, but we know that they're very closely connected. Really importantly, gut bacteria produce a hormone called GABA. And GABA binds to cortisol receptors and stops you from being able to feel stress. So if you've got plenty of really beneficial gut bacteria and you're feeding them really well, you're going to be producing lots of serotonin, lots of GABA to help to manage that stress. And actually, our gut is one of the key ways of harnessing these happy hormones that can help to counteract stress and help us to cope with these things better.
The reason why I asked that also is quite personal, because I realized that I was holding a lot of, in times of stress, I hold a lot of it in my stomach, and we don't sort of realize that actually it's really linked to our sort of nervous system, isn't it? The
Yeah.
gut is.
Yeah, hugely. And I think that's one of the things that, in my clinics when I'm working with people with gut disorders, we'll talk a lot about food, and we'll try and find the trigger foods for their symptoms and get things better for them. But ultimately, often the solution is to manage stress. And that's not always easy for people to accept. But what we always do is encourage them to go away and do breath work, do meditation, find something that works for them to help with that stress management. Because as you say, a lot of people carry their stress in their gut. And I sometimes think, and some of my patients might disagree with me, but sometimes that's quite a useful early warning system. Because speaking of burnout, we're not always great at recognizing when we're at the edge. And actually, if our gut says, hang on, something's not right, we can catch that and move away from it.
Amazing, thank you. Supplements. Now, this is a huge subject, and I know that you work with a lot of different brands to create supplements. There are so many supplements on the market. How do you choose? How do you choose what you need? And also, I love what you said about you can't sort of out supplement a bad diet, and that's the thing. A lot of people will push their bodies to extremes and just think, well, I'm taking lots of supplements, so it's fine. But actually, I'm sure it's cancelling it out. But I'd love to know, and I'm sure people here would love to know, how do you choose good supplements?
Yeah, it's really difficult, and the market is hugely overwhelming. And for each nutrient, there's a good source of that nutrient and a bad source of that nutrient, or not so good source of that nutrient. For example, lots of people are very interested in taking magnesium, but if you take magnesium citrate, it can give you diarrhea, which can make you lose more magnesium. So magnesium bisglycinate is the best one to take, and so on and so on. This applies to pretty much all nutrients. And so it's really complicated and difficult to be able to sit here and tell you exactly what to take. When we speak specifically about stress, you may want to think about magnesium, which is used up very rapidly during times of stress. And you do want a magnesium glycinate or magnesium bisglycinate in that situation. Omega-3 is super, super important because in an ideal scenario, 25% of the physical structure of your brain is made from a part of omega-3 called DHA, which only comes from fish or algae oil. And if you don't have enough fish oil in your diet or algae oil in your diet, if you take a supplement, then it's a bit like taking 25% of the bricks of your house out and replacing them with polystyrene. It kind of looks the same, but under a strong wind, like a lot of stress, it's not going to be coping very well.
That's a very good analogy.
So omega-3 is a really important one, especially if you're not consuming oily fish, salmon, mackerel, that sort of thing, at least twice a week. And then B vitamins are the other really important one. And if you're looking for a B vitamin complex, choose a B vitamin complex to start with, not just individual B vitamins. You'll get a better outcome from that, because if you're struggling with one, you're likely to be struggling with others. And choose a methylated B vitamin complex, which means it's much easier for you to be able to absorb and use in the body.
So my final question, what are some of the practical things, tips and tricks, whether short-term, long-term, that we can adopt nutrition-wise to keep our stress levels in check?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the things food-wise that can happen, particularly when we're stressed, is that we can really reach for these processed snacks and things like that, which can push your blood sugars up, which can make you feel more stressed. You're almost feeding that stress. And then as you're coming down, you can feel more stressed. And we can ride that kind of sugar wave all day, which can be really difficult. So I would say think about planning your meals a little bit where you've got the capacity to do so. Think about batch cooking. So Sunday night version of yourself might be very grateful for a meal. If you cook some meals on a Wednesday night, on a Sunday night, the Wednesday night version of yourself is going to be very grateful for that meal you prepared for yourself when you know you're going to have a busy day. Carry healthy snacks, nuts, seeds, that kind of stuff around with you. Some of these healthier snack bars are great now as well. So you've always got something balanced on hand. And one of the things that can be really helpful for some of my patients is thinking about using these meal kit delivery companies. So where you know you're not going to be able to prepare a meal for yourself in the way that you might dream of doing every night, at least you've got a healthy, balanced meal that's not going to take you so long to put together and use. And I think if we can just do some nudging towards the right direction, even under times of stress and pressure, and maybe do a little bit of preparation for that time of stress and pressure, we can really alleviate some of these problems that we can occur.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to swap you around now with Rob.
Testing.
Oh, your mic is absolutely. Is that okay? Yeah. Amazing. I think this is working now. Brilliant. Lovely to have you here, Rob.
Thank you so much. Hello.
I'm really fascinated by the work you do, so I'd love you to explain to everyone what exactly is breath work.
I know breath work. Well, firstly, hello. Hello, everybody. My name's Rob. Thanks for staying around to listen. And I wish I had my notebook, actually, to take some of your tips. That was recorded, wasn't it? Can you send me the tape? What is breath work? I suppose breath work now has become so kind of a lot more mainstream and a lot more broad. So previously, some people might have had experience with breath work through pranayama, which is the yogic science of breath and body. There's breath work that would be called functional breath work, performance breath work, transformational breath work. I suppose to like pull it back, my view on breath work is simply the conscious control or manipulation of your breath, because otherwise essentially you're just breathing, which is the joke I always hear, especially from my dad. He's like, why do I need to learn how to breathe? Sure, I've 83 years of it. But yeah, there is an efficient way of breathing, and using breath work protocols, we can affect our physiology, and we know now that physiology and psychology are inextricably linked. So if we can affect our physiology through the language of the nervous system, which is breath, then we can actually affect how we start to see the world and how do we perceive the world.
Talk to us about how you actually got into it, because I think your story is quite fascinating.
Yeah, my journey into breathwork was quite eclectic, I suppose. I was in a corporate job, went to Bali on my honeymoon. That's the result, actually. 13 years later, actually. This was back in 2012, and I experienced pranayama, which was the yogic science of breath and body. The hotel had a free class each morning, and I kind of thought, I'm going to go down and do yoga every day, and that's fine. But I remember sitting down for the very first time, and the teacher just made us sit utterly still. Which, if anyone was at my session earlier, I made everyone sit very still for the first couple of minutes, and even that in itself was quite difficult for me. And I realised at the point, quite how much resistance I actually had to just sitting still. After that, I suppose he guided us into just a nice elongated breath, a little breath hold, and an exhalation. And I kind of went through the whole stage of, this is ridiculous, what a pile of nonsense, to, well, I'm here for the next 40 minutes, I may as well just give it a go, to maybe 20 minutes through going, this is class, like, why isn't everyone doing this, And that actually has become a very pivotal moment in my journey into breath work, or the world of stillness, which I find extremely dynamic and creative space. But at that stage, I wasn't at all planning to be a breathwork coach. In fact, I didn't even know it existed. I started to learn it much more through that lens initially of pranayama, and then I got to spend some time in the States with some surfers, some freedivers, who were very focused on using breath as a means to keep ourselves and to keep stress levels down whenever we're under the water. And I realized at that point that, of course, yes, we were talking about under the water, but actually you could transcend that across into business, into performance, into sport, into acting, singing, all these different things. So I started really, really diving into that world, again, from exploration. And initially, a lot of my mates asked me why I'm doing it, and then they started asking me how I'm doing it. And it's always that kind of journey with whenever you're maybe doing something that was initially quite different to the rest of my pals, now quite a lot of them are so interested and would make use of a lot of the protocols that we would try to put in place.
It is quite fascinating how we, like when you mentioned about your dad, who's like, yeah, I breathe, like, that's what we do, sort of thing. And you do forget that how the way you breathe has an impact on how you're feeling in a certain situation. Classic example you gave, like the divers. If they were breathing in a different way, they would panic when they were below water, I guess.
Yeah,
and that would result in quite,
fatal
circumstances. So talk to me about how it actually helps to alleviate stress when we breathe in a certain way.
Yeah. So, I mean, we mentioned briefly the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is this beautiful meandering, vagus meaning wandering, I suppose, this wandering nerve that comes down from the brainstem and connects into most of your vital organs in the body. That makes up 75% of the parasympathetic state, which has nothing to do with sympathy and everything to do with rest and relaxation. So think of that lovely Sunday, tomorrow afternoon, you've just had a lovely big roast. You've lit the fire and you're just about to fall asleep. That's most likely parasympathetic state. And this is a state that we can access through, essentially, through breath work and through, massage, or through anything that I suppose activates the vagus tone. Now, if you want to talk about specifically how that happens in the breath, the exhale, to simplify it, is your slowing down of your heart rate. So inhale speeds it up and the exhale slows it down. This beautiful duality of life within that, of course, but we can make use of this education piece to understand that if I start to elongate my breath on the exhale, then I'm going to slow my heart rate down, and therefore the body, you're speaking that language to the body to say, oh, you're safe, you're not as stressed, Very rarely in your life, if you're extremely stressed, are you going to be breathing like that. Most people will maybe relate to that. That feeling of hyperventilation. Actually, it's chronic hyperventilation is not it can be dangerous, of course, if we do it over 45 minutes, 15 minutes. But people start to breathe. It would be termed chronically fast if you have over 16 breaths per minute. A breath cycle being inhale and exhale. So any way that we can start to try to slow that respiratory rate down is training the body to, training the body to deal better with any cortisol and fight the release of cortisol in our body.
Do you find, and I hadn't asked you this before, but I'm suddenly thinking, do you generally now are you always conscious of how you're breathing?
Yeah, I mean, awareness is the biggest piece of the jigsaw, and that's, I would love, if anyone can take anything away from today, is just to bring awareness to how you're breathing, even in this moment. Is it in through the nose? Is it out through the nose? Or through the mouth? At what pace are you breathing? Is it feeling easy? Is it feeling mechanical? Is it feeling soft? Is it noisy? Is it loud? Because all these things, I can not often tell if my wife is feeling stressed, because she'll kind of do a sigh without even noticing. I'm like, oh, what's wrong? She's like, why? What? I didn't say anything. It's like, well, what were you thinking about just there? Because there's so many kind of cues that someone can give just through their breath, and you can see that whenever you're in conversation with people. Sometimes they just get a little bit more tense if they breathe in through the mouth, a sharp intake. There's actually a phenomenon called email apnea, and this is whenever apnea meaning to stop the breath or a retention, and whenever we get an email from a boss or a client, sometimes we dysfunctionally stop breathing. And then what happens after that is your body needs or feels like it needs more air, so we breathe in faster, which has a cascade of effects. So yeah, you can really train yourself to become conscious. But that takes practice. It's like a muscle that we have to keep on working at. And I know myself, whenever I've been going through a lovely period of monitoring my breath, doing breathwork protocols, doing meditations, and I really see meditation as the next stage after breathwork and meditation. I make a very clear distinction because they're not the same thing for me. But breathwork is the gateway into meditation.
The email apnea thing is quite fascinating, actually, because I'm sure we've all had that when you do get an email or something, or you get, I mean, now it's like an email or a text or a Slack or a WhatsApp, and you're like,
Yeah.
and you don't realize you're sort of doing it, but then you have this snowball effect of that. Tell me, have you seen, in the time that you've been practicing, have you seen that the stress levels of your clients seem to have been much higher? Are you seeing a lot more of that?
Yeah, I mean, you just need to look around the world, I suppose, to see what's going on as to why we're maybe a wee bit more stressed, and also societally, I suppose, with social media, with things coming from, as you say, Twitter, Instagram, social, all these things, the attention spans. You know, the big social media giants are behavioral psychologists to keep us online, to keep us hooked, and this has a major impact on our ability just to be in stillness, which is why, you know, in any of my events, in any of my retreats, and any of this work, I actually try to take the phone away from people. For the 2-3 days that we're there, if we have to use it, it's like you can use it between 5 o'clock and 5:30 on each day. It's their choice, of course, but you know, you're going to get the most out of it if you can actually just reconnect back into that stillness. And I think it's important to remember about, you know, your physical environment, your emotional environment, your digital environment, and if you are, you know, so I think you mentioned doom scrolling. You know, like how are you spending your time? Whenever you are actually on your phone, because it has an impact on our stress levels, of course. So yeah, I've seen that hugely with clients, and actually one of the big things we practice is to try to build their ability to sit in a breathwork or meditation in stillness, in silence, for, you know, 24 minutes is the kind of key number that I always try to push clients towards. But with some clients, we start at 2 minutes. We say we need to find something that is sustainable daily. And so I always say, look, 10 breaths.
That is something that we can start with.
Oh, definitely. Home. Yeah. I mean, you're going to breathe the 10 breaths anyway. Yeah. So I hope, you know, so you may as well do yourself a favor as well, and just for those 10 breaths, say, okay, I'm gonna close my eyes and I'm just gonna feel it. I'm gonna watch it in. I'm gonna watch it out, and actually just check how many times you've lost train of thought and you've gone off into a thought bubble before you've even got to 10 breaths. And it's quite shocking. Sometimes you're like, I left there at 3 breaths, and okay, I'm gonna, you know, and try to do your 10 breaths, because over time you'll get there, and then your body will kind of, the neurons, those that fire together, wire together, and they'll know that, okay, this is a thing that we do, and then go for 20 breaths and build it up like that, and then it starts to be minutes, 20 minutes.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
That's a really good tip that I guess that we can actually take away with us, and start doing quite easily, I guess, at home. Just to end our session, I'd love to ask you, Dr. Mariam, if there's one takeaway in terms of what everyone can do to reduce their stress levels, an easy kind of takeaway, what would it be?
I think it's hard to reduce your stress, but I think in terms of what you can do to make yourself feel better and to take it down a notch is to find your thing. So it can be skincare, it can be exercise, it can be meditation, it can be breathing, but find something that you can be consistent with, and then focus on that in the short term, because I kind of feel it's a snowball effect. For me, it started with exercise, then it was more about nutrition, then, you know, as I became more enlightened, it became with, you know, breath work or breathing. So find your medium, and that becomes your gateway to a better everything.
Amazing. And Sophie?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to focus just on the food, but actually I think some of the other things that can be a little bit easier to access sometimes then snowball into better things as well. And for me, I have a big dog, and getting out walking every day makes a massive difference to my mental health. So first thing in the morning, I'm always out with the dog before I do anything else. And I'm lucky to have access to beautiful places. We live in a nice area of London, but ultimately just getting out in nature, trying to see some trees and spend some time outside just makes a huge difference to your mental health, to your day. And there's amazing studies backing that up as well. So really worth just starting there if everything else feels too difficult.
That's amazing advice. And I mean, I'm absolutely no expert, but one of the things that I would definitely advise, or has been working for me, is never to wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is look at your social media or your emails. I just think it's just not the best way to kick off a day. So I just refuse to look at those, especially social media. I do not look at social media first thing in the morning. It's not that great.
I totally agree with that, actually, and it teaches the body that it's going to get a dopamine spike whenever you wake up. So your body actually starts to predict the next day that you should be getting a dopamine spike. So the cortisol gets released earlier, and you actually start to wake up earlier. So it actually has a future detrimental impact. So yeah, it's a beautiful one for me. Thank you for that.
I had no idea. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Rob and Dr.
you.
Mariam.
Thank you for
and
having us.
Sophie, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone who stayed to listen. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.